Hi, my name is Kimberly from Zebra Development. Today I'm going to give you a demonstration of how to bring your DotDigital data into Razor's Edge using Importacular. So the first thing you need to do is open up the plugins area of Razor's Edge, open up Importacular, select DotDigital from the available data sources and click Start. And now you can choose the data that you want to bring into Razor's Edge from DotDigital. So you've got a number of different options. You've got your campaign activity, your changed contact information, your clicks, your bounces, and your unsubscribed contacts. So I'm going to start by showing you my changed contacts. And then I just select a date, and I can restrict the number of records that I bring back as well. And when I click OK, we can see I've got 152 records to review. I've got a mapping template set up, so let's just take a look at how I've created that. So when you open up the mapping template, you can see that we've got all the different areas of Razor's Edge along the top as tabs, and within each of those tabs we've got all the different areas you might want to map to within your Razor's Edge. The first thing we have to do is create a constituent mapping, which I've set up here. So let's open that up. And you can see all the Razor's Edge fields on the left. And in the middle, we've got the source field. So that's the data that's coming from DotDigital. So the fields that are available. If you click on the drop down, you can see all the available fields, and you can map those to anywhere you want those to go in Razor's Edge. And we can also choose a default value as well. And this will vary depending on the type of field it is in Razor's Edge. So a text field you can type into, a tick box you can check, and if it's a code table, you can choose from the drop down. As you can see, I've mapped some basic fields here. I've got the first name, the gender, and the last name as well. And you can also see that we've got some settings. So if I click on that, we can see I can choose to update this data for new and existing constituent records. I've unticked existing constituent records because I don't want to mess with the surname for anybody I've got in Razor's Edge already. And I've also set up text casing options. So this is really useful when people are entering their own data. You can update it to make sure it comes into Razor's Edge in the case that you expect. We've also got some other options here. So we can update this field based on another field, and we can run a transformation. Obviously, some of these field settings are more useful on some areas than other. For example, the data transformations is very useful if you've got a code table in Razor's Edge, but not in DotDigital. So let's say on a postal address on the county or the state field, you can then change from the source to whatever you have it as in Razor's Edge. So for example, you could change Hants to Hampshire, you could change countries from UK to Great Britain or whatever it is, so that Razor's Edge data is always updated in the right way. So if we're happy with that, we can save it. And we can then set up any number of different mappings to go with that constituent, so connected to it. So I've created a consent record here. I'm using their last subscribed date to create a DotDigital category consent record with the channel and the response. And I've set up their DotDigital ID as a constituent alias as well, so that I can use that later on to identify that person on Razor's Edge very easily when I'm bringing in other data. In addition, if we go to the address tab, I've added the email address and the postal address that people have entered when they've signed up to my DotDigital list. So let's take a look. Here we can see we've got a drop-down default value of the preferred email as the type, and I've also added it as the primary record, and I've set it up with the email. There are also some settings on the area as well as on each different field that allow you to make some choices too. Let's take a look. So here we can see that we're going to use the email address as a lookup for the constituent. And we can also choose what to do when we find a matched phone record. So I'm only going to add a new email address in this case when no existing match is found. Otherwise, I'm going to update the existing one. And I can choose what a match looks like. Is it matching on type and number or just number? So in this case, just the email address. And I can choose to add this one as the primary one and then mark the old one as inactive if I want to as well. And these options, as appropriate to each one, are available on each area that you set up. So exactly the same option with the address, the option to back up as well. So you're never losing your address history. So those are the information that I've asked for on my DotDigital sign up form. So I'm going to bring those back into Razor's Edge. So we just save and close this template. We're going to create a control report, and that will show us any errors there might be during the process. And I can choose to only process a small number of records, which is really useful when I'm testing my template or creating a new one. So at this point, I'm just going to process the first 2 records, and I'm going to create a raised edge query of my new constituents too. So when I click continue, we can see on this first screen, we've got the records that I'm going to be importing and the options for any matches that have been found in Razor's Edge. So the first record is showing and the action to take window shows what's going to happen. So here I need to decide. So this is the constituent, and then these are the possible matches. So I need to decide which one I want to update. And we can see that we've got more than one person with this email address. So the top one looks like it's the right person to me, but if I'm not sure, I can click on the Razor's Edge logo, and that will open up the record so I can double check it and see if I'm happy to update that record. That looks good to me, so I'm going to update it. And then the next one down here, again, I've got a match. It's decided that it's going to update it automatically because there's only one match and it's a good or an exact match. So that's the direction of my data. And then I've also got each tab that shows me every single data point I'm going to bring into Razor's Edge. So here I can see I've got my DotDigital ID that I'm going to add as an alias, if there is one. I've got my consent that I've created too. And then in my address, I've got my postal address and my email addresses as well. So if I'm happy with that information, I can import it. But before I do that, I can run the validation, and that will just check all of the available data against my code tables in Razor's Edge to make sure it's all going to go in as I'd expect. So once I validate, we can see we've got 2 records to be updated. If there were any errors, we'd see them here, and we can view those errors in the control report. As this all looks okay, we're going to import that data. Create my query, and that's all complete. So let's come up here and go and take a look at that query. Oh. So we've got 2 records here that we've updated. So we had a new address here. So if we go to the address tab, we can see that that old one that he had has been added as an alternate address. We've got the alias that's been added here with the DotDigital ID. His email address was already a match. And then we've got his consent record here as well. So we can see that that's been added with an opt-in. So that's how we bring in our changes, but also we can bring in our campaign activity from DotDigital as well. So once we've sent our email out and we want to bring in the results of our emails, then we can use Importacular to do that too. Just select DotDigital from Importacular and click Start. And now when we choose our activity, I'm going to bring in my campaign activity. And I can either bring it in from all campaigns or a specific campaign. I've got a demo campaign here, and I can select a date for changes. So we've got 4 records to review here. And again, I've got a different mapping template that I've set up for this type of data. So let's take a quick look at that. So I've mapped the constituent, and I have to have a constituent record in order to create any mapping. But what I've done is ignore all the fields apart from the required field, which you can see with the green tick here for the surname. I've matched it to the contact ID, and in the settings, I've set it to not update any values. So all I'm saying here is that I'm not using the surname at all, and I'm not going to be creating any records because I'm updating records that already exist in Razor's Edge. And then I've set up my matching to match on email address. I've also got my alias, which I can match on as well here because I've already imported that into Razor's Edge in my previous import. And then I've got my email address set for a lookup as well. But the information that I'm actually bringing in here is an action. So I want to bring in all the people I sent an email to and what they've done with that email. So let's take a look. So in the mappings tab, we can see that we've got all of these options down here. If we open my action, we can see it's linked with our constituent record. And you can see there are far more required fields on certain types of records. So I've got my action date, and my source fields coming in from campaign data is very different. So I've got my opens, my clicks, bounces, people who sent the email, the campaign name, and so forth. So I've got my action date, I've got my category. I've set up a campaign for this email because it was around a specific campaign. And when I click on the default values here, I can look through and select the specific campaign that I want to use if I choose. I've got a category, my date sent, and the priority, and then I've got default values for the status and type as well. So that's creating my action. I've then added my opens and my clicks as action attributes. So we can see I've got the number of opens as the description for this action attribute, and the date first opened as a date as well. So I'll be able to then search on that and report on that in Razor's Edge. I'm also going to add a notepad, and this will be the campaign name. So I can give it a date of date sent, I can give it a type of email, and then I'm going to give it a title of campaign name. So I can very easily see which campaign that refers to. So let's save and close that template. Again, we're going to create a control report in case there are any errors in the process. And I'm going to create a query. So now, and I click continue. So the first page will show us the records that we're going to update in Razor's Edge. Bear in mind, obviously, that the surname and the primary constituent won't mean very much as we're just using that as a placeholder. But what we really want to look at here is the email address to make sure that we're happy with that record. So we've got 4 records to be updated. If we go to the address tab in the email, then we can take a look at those there. But the thing that we're actually updating here is the action. So all of the other fields are simply being used for lookups, and this is what we're going to be adding to these records. So we can see the action here with all the different fields available. We can see the opens, the campaign name, and the clicks. So again, we're going to, once we're happy with that, we're going to validate it. We're going to get 4 updated records, and let's import it. And let's go and find that query. So we've got 4 updated records. Let's take a look at the first one. If we find the action we've just created, we can see it here. So we've got all of the information that I added in our main mapping screen. So the action type, the status, the campaign that I added as a default. We've got the attributes, so 7 email opens in the date of the first open, and 1 click as well. And finally, we've got the notepad, which would shows us the Importacular demo as the title of that email campaign. So that's how easy it is to bring your data in from DotDigital into Razor's Edge using Importacular. Thanks for listening.